In this video, I will teach getters and setters. What are getters and setters? This is for the Java language. It can be kind of uncomfortable trying to learn what getters and setters are, what are constructors, what are objects, all this elementary Java stuff. But you have to learn this stuff in order to program, in order to write programs. So let's get to it. Here I have a project. I think I had created I think what I did was I created a Maven project, a new project. Yeah, I build Maven. But if you build Maven, it's going to give you this basic Java and these basic source file folders. So I made a main class here and main method. Now we're going to create a new package just to illustrate that these getters and setters can work across packages. The package will be called model. And we'll create a class inside this model, call it animal. Okay. So we're going to have animals such as dolphin, rat, monkey, I guess. Okay? Animals. And we're going to have fields. Actually, before I get to making fields and making getters and setters and stuff, when you see this, when you see a public class such as animal, or you see public class such as employee, or public class anything really, public class students, you got to think of it, especially when you're starting off with Java, when you're starting off with programming. You can't think of this as like, oh look, here's a class and it's empty, there's nothing here. You can't think of it that way. Because number one, you have to remember that a class is a blueprint for an object. Okay? Class is blueprint for objects. And also remember, class is a file. Okay? That might sound so basic, but you have to remember that this class is nothing more than just a file in your computer. And it just has information about for building an animal object. And so when you think of objects, remember, objects have state and behavior. Okay? And you can also think of it as objects must have state and behavior, okay? Especially when you're starting off. Just think of it as objects must have state and behavior. And so you ask, what is state? State is your fields, okay? Private string species, okay? This is a field, private, belongs to this class. Private is also important because it's going to help drive home the fact of encapsulation. So objects must have state and behavior. So it must have state. It must have, like if you ask somebody like, what state are you in? Not like Colorado or Mississippi, but like, what state are you in? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you going to work? Are you, well, that's not a good one, but if you're asking like for state, you're asking for like, in what form are these objects? We'll do private double weight. Okay, so we have species, and as we said, could be like a dolphin, a rat, a monkey, species, double weight. Okay, so now this kind of makes more sense when you look at this. So objects must have state, and they also must have behavior. But let's continue on with state. And so we're going to generate constructors. Alright, I'm going to explain a little bit more what a constructor is. We're going to generate all kinds of constructors for all this stuff. All args, F, you see that field. So you generate constructors, specify the field. We're going to keep generating more and more and more constructors. Generate constructor, no args constructor, and generate. See, I'm just showing you how you generate constructors. Generate constructor for the weight, generate constructor for the species, generate constructor. Let's generate one for the species, right? Okay, so going on with a class as a blueprint for your objects, this is going to be like how these are going to make animal objects. So this will make hopefully a little bit more sense later. Okay, so I'm not going to jump to getters and setters quite yet. Let's go to our main class and let's instantiate an animal object. This is how you instantiate animal. Animal equals new animal. Okay. And you look at that, we're dealing with a no args constructor here. It's no args, it's empty, right? There's nothing in there. No args. We use this lowercase animal because that's just good, I forget the exact word right now, but that's just good code quality, I guess. To use a similar looking thing, it just flows better. If we use just like a little letter, it gets obnoxious. So just spell out the word animal. Now we're not going to use a no args constructor because it's kind of lame, because we want to start doing stuff right away. And now let's say we want to deal with species, right? So we type species in here, right? And look at that, it's red. There's a problem with it. Okay. Now the reason there's a problem with it is because if you look at our constructor here for species, right? It says string. String. It wants a string, right? It wants a string. You need to give a string. Okay? In other words, just right off the bat, just specify. So if I type in these quotations, right? It tells us it already tells us species, okay? So we can already go in there and just talk about species. So let's say dolphin. So now I just created an animal object, or a reference to an animal object here. And a reference to an animal object, and this animal object in the heap in the heap of the computer basically will be holding this string, right, for dolphin, a string with the value of dolphin. Okay, so this is how you make basically a dolphin. You got your reference. This is in the stack. There's a thing in the stack, a thread in the stack, which is pointing to an object in the heap with a string dolphin, which is part of the state of this animal object. All right. So why don't we just like sout dolphin, right? Right? Why don't we just sout dolphin, right? Like, what's wrong with that? I mean, aside from the fact that it's just kind of lame. This is not, dolphin. This is not really like what programming is about. We want to be able to take this animal object, this dolphin animal object, and be able to like do stuff with it, to like maybe change the name of it, or we had this weight field, right? we had this field called weight. We want to be able to like set the weight of this object, or measure. I'll show you later, like other stuff pertaining to weight. So let's say I'll quickly show you setter. Okay. Now for me, like setter, I had a harder time wrapping my mind around setter than getter. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna change the species to rat. Okay, we're gonna change this animal object from a dolphin to a rat, and we're gonna print it out. We're gonna show that this is what's going on. So we're gonna sout animal, right? Lowercase animal. Actually, I already messed up. See, I told you I had a harder time wrapping my mind around setters. So yeah, let's do animal dot set species, and we're gonna put in there rat. Okay. So we're gonna change from dolphin to a rat. So what I did was I called this reference. I said animal dot set this to being a rat. Now there's an error here, and that's because because this is a method here, right? It's also a setter, right? But none exists in the animal class. So we have to make one. Now we can have IntelliJ just make one automatically for us, but I'm just going to go ahead and make it. So the way you can make a setter, or the way you should make a setter, is just right click, generate setter for species. Okay, and instantly it's yellow now because it's being used. Okay, animal.set species rat. Also, it's good to point out that in this setter here for set species, it's a void. Okay, void means there's no return value. It's simply just void, there's no return. Okay, even though you see this here, this dot species equals species, yeah, it's just telling you that the string that you're setting it with. So we typed in rat. This is all reference to the state of this object. Okay, but there's no return here. That's important. For a setter, there's no return value. You're just like, you can think of it, a good way to think of it is like, let's say you have a bank account, right? You have a bank account, you got your bank account number, and when you deposit money, you're basically setting a balance, right? So let's say you have $0 in your bank account, you put $10 in your bank account, you're now setting your bank account to 10. Alright, you're depositing, but you're not getting anything back, right? When you deposit, you're just putting a value in there, and you're not getting anything back. And you could think of a void as similar. This void set species, these setters, as like you're just putting information into the animal object. So yeah, we did animal.set species rat. I mean, we could print it out, just show you that. Sout and animal dot get species. See, now I'm showing you getter. Alright, and again, it's red because because this getter doesn't really exist. Well, we'll go back here and just make a getter. Generate getter for a species. Okay. And now when we do animal.getSpecies, what we're doing is we're getting this rat here. We're getting the species, the field. We're getting the state of this animal object, which is now a rat. Animal dot get this value. Okay, so we set the value to rat, and now we're getting the rat. And going back to the bank illustration, so the setter, we deposited money into the account, and the getter is like, hey, can I get, or can you give me my balance? Can you give me my bank statement? Can you get me the species? What species is this animal object? Alright, so we'll print that out. Rat. Okay, so up here we declared a new animal object with a species of dolphin. We then renamed the species. We said, no, actually, we're going to call it a rat. And then now we printed out the setter, right? We printed out the fact confirmation that we had like set it to a rat. And actually, honestly, I'm going to go back. I could comment this out. I guess why not? I'll just comment it out. So you can just keep looking at it. Oops, I always do that. I always press the wrong button. Yeah. I'll comment it out. So you could keep looking at this if you want, if you get a little confused. Just pretend this is not here. It's commented out. Alright, so we have an animal. It's a dolphin. And let's go ahead and set the weight of the dolphin. Animal dot set weight. And remember, weight is a double value, 200. Okay, again, it's red because we don't have a setter for these weight. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create a setter. Remember, we're in our animal class. Generate setter for the weight. And we're going to generate a getter while we're at it too for the weight. Okay. Now you see how tedious it was to go back and forth to this animal class and make these getters and setters. So now get in the habit of, when you create a class of something, just go ahead and just right click, generate, and just getter and you even have a getter and setter here. You can generate getter and setter, and it will generate getter and setter for just everything. Alright. So now we can set the weight, and we set the weight to 200. Cool. Okay, so now I hope getter and setter makes a little bit more sense to you now. Let's out animal.getWeight. Alright, so we're, oops, button did I just press? Alright, so I'm going to show you that this dolphin is 200 pounds. Or it's going to show 200 pounds. Alright, so this dolphin is 200 pounds. I'll add a note there, pounds. 200 pounds. The dolphin is 200 pounds. Now, let's add some behavior to, or let's add some stuff we could do with this dolphin. So we're going to add a method. Yeah, we're going to add a method here called, okay, feed. Okay, we're going to feed the dolphin. We're going to feed the dolphin food. If I remember right how we're going to do this, animal.get weight. times .02. Okay, so we're going to pass in the animal object, and we're going to return animal.getWeight. Okay, so public double here. It's public. This is a method. It can be used across this program here. It's going to return a numerical double value. In order to use this method, you need an object of animal, and so it's going to return that animal. It's going to get its weight. It's going to find the weight of that animal. It's going to multiply that weight times .02. Final number value is how much food to feed the animal. Okay, and this is gray because it says this method is not being used, and we'll go ahead and use it in the main class. See how that works? Animal.feed. We're going to take this animal, we're calling this animal object, and we're saying feed the animal. Animal, come here. We're going to feed you. Let's print that out. Okay, so remember, up here we printed out the weight of this animal, which is 200, because we set the weight to 200. And down here we fed the animal. And this number 4 is how much food we are feeding it. We're feeding it 4 pounds of food. 200-pound animal is getting 4 pounds of food. And I'm going to show you quickly another kind of Java class, which is called an interface. I think metric, right? Metric. Yeah, metric. Alright. I think we're calling it feed metric. Yeah. Let's call it feed metric. Okay, that's it. So this, we created an interface called metric, and we just have one method in here called feed metric, and this method should return a double. Again, it should also, this one is going to return a double, a numerical value. So we're going to go into our animal class, and we're going to say this class implements metric. Okay, so this class is going to implement this interface we just made, and it's bugging out because it wants us, when you implement an interface, you have to bring in these interface methods, okay? And it just automatically makes it for you, and it reminds you that it has to return a double. It even reminds you that you have to return a double because it shows you a little number here. Okay. Now, why can't we just do this? Why can't we just do return, let's say animal times 0.10. Why can't we do that? Why can't we just return animal times 0.10? And it's because like this just doesn't make sense. It has no idea what you're talking about. It wants you to create a local variable, right? So it wants you to create a local variable of animal. But again, I don't even think this is correct. Okay, you have to do something a little bit more sophisticated than that. Animal equals new animal. And you have to pass in the weight, because the weight is a double. And you have to return, let's delete this stuff, animal dot get weight, and we're going to multiply that by 0.10. And so this feed metric method will final number is a metric value of how much food to feed the animal. Okay. Now I just showed you like how to use an interface. So remember, you make your interface class, you just make a little method here. This one was not a void method. This was a kind of method where we have to return something. We go into our animal class. It automatically tells us when we type in implements metric, it automatically tells us we have to call one of those methods. It makes it for us. It even gives us a cool looking annotation. And yeah. So let's say, so we got this, right? 200-pound animal. We feed it 4 pounds of food. And now let's say, let's print out how much food in metric units are we going to feed it. And all we really need to do, we can actually just copy and paste this, actually. Paste animal dot feed metric, and the metric is no args. There you go. So let's print this out. Let's clean this up a little bit. Let's make some space here. We'll make some space. And we'll run it. Okay, so remember, we have a 200-pound animal. Comes from here. We're feeding it 4 pounds of food. We made some space. And then 4 pounds of food is 20 metric units. Okay, and if you do like, if you take 200 times 0.10 or 10% of 200, and that's 20. Okay, so you see how we used getters and setters. We used a constructor. But to me, it's interesting that when you implement this interface and you have this method here, what you can do is you can instantiate, and you should, you can instantiate an animal object. And the Java language, etc., is so smart that it knows that if you just make a new animal object and we're talking about the weight of the object, even though we like, let's say I just called this reference like the letter M, okay, and I just typoed. Okay, let me just say I called the reference M. Right, and you see how in our main class we instantiated an animal with this reference called animal. This thing, the Java language is so advanced that it doesn't matter. Like, we could put any little symbol here. It just knows that when we're talking about an object of animal, we're talking about what we're doing in the main method here. And so we're just going to return that animal with a weight, with a known weight. Okay, we're going to get that weight of that animal object that we're dealing with, and we're going to multiply it times 0.10. Let me show you what happens if I typed in like let's say species, right? Because we have our other field species. Get weight, right? It's going to return 0. It's interesting that it doesn't like bug out and tell us right away that we're doing something weird. But let me show you what happens when we run it. See? 0. Because it does m.getWeight, but we told the thing we're talking about species, so it's going to look for the weight, even though it's going to say get weight, but we're talking about animal with species, and it's like, well, species is a string, and so it's like, well, there's nothing there. I don't know what to do. It's just 0. And let's say if we had put in let's say like 7,000. Or that's a huge weight. Let me show you what happens when we put in like some other like foreign number value, 7,000. Okay, 700. So it's gonna, if you put in 7,000, remember in our main method, we were dealing with a 200-pound animal. But when you do animal.foodMetric, it really is going to make this new animal object with a weight of 7,000, and it's going to deal with this new value here. So let's just go bring it back down to weight. Let's say weight again. Weight. And let's tell, we're going to tell the software that this method here, we're going to just deal with the latest, greatest version of animal object we got. That's here. Let me call this animal again, because I just think it looks better. Animal.getWeight. Okay, I think that makes a little bit more sense. So yeah, that's getters and setters. I showed you constructors. I'm not going to post this on GitHub. This is really all I got here, I promise. There's only 3 classes here. And you could try your best to follow along and try it on your own. And happy coding.